the people of Timor-Leste, the institutions of government and civil society on the successful conduct of a peaceful and orderly presidential election on April 16. So far, the information available to us suggests that the election was free and fair. We understand that Timor-Leste electoral authorities are continuing to tabulate the official results of this second round of the election. Provisional results should be forthcoming in the next 24 hours or so, but clearly we congratulate the people of Timor-Leste. We strongly support the country in its efforts to strengthen democratic institutions and consolidate peace and security. And of course, this election constitutes a significant step in that process. That's all I have for the top, Matt.
Yeah, I wonder if we can start with Iran.
Sure.
I realize that there's been some comment about the results of the meeting on Saturday, including from the president yesterday. But I'm just wondering, what is it that the United States thinks was achieved?
Well, I think going into this, we were looking for, as the Secretary and others said, a sustained process. We're already looking to a second meeting next month in Baghdad. I think this was, I don't think anyone's trying to characterize this as more than a beginning and a first step, if you will. We've said that we want to see Iran come up with some concrete proposals moving forward, and that if that were to happen, we would look at ways. Kathy Ashton's statement said as much to reciprocate, but we viewed this as a good, positive initial first step.
She described it, Catherine Ashton described it as constructive and useful, but it seems to me that the only thing that resulted from it is an agreement to meet again. That's a pretty low bar. We used to, kind of make fun of results like that, where the only thing that you can say that they managed to accomplish was they agreed to meet each other again.
Well, I don't think anyone's under any illusions that we were going to come away from this first meeting, advancing the ball far down the field, to use a sports metaphor. We were looking for, as we said all along, the beginning step of a sustained process.
Okay.
Secretary President been very clear. There's still time for diplomacy, but there is an urgency here.
All right.
So we want to see it move forward.
So the goal is to have a sustained process.
No. Ultimately, the goal is to have Iran take concrete steps that obviously address the international community's concerns about its nuclear program. But we recognize that that's going to take time.
Can you describe for me where a sustained process has worked in the past to achieve the result that you're looking for? In particular, I think of these sustained processes that I've dealt with, and not a single one of them has ever achieved any success.
Well, I would just, look, this is so apples and oranges to compare one negotiation to
if
another.
It's the process.
And one type of engagement to another. We did have our engagement and our sanctions, our two-track approach, if you will, to Burma has borne fruit in the sense that Burma's really opened up and taken steps. But it's a completely different issue. Don't really want to go down there. You asked me for a comparison.
Well, yeah, but except that you weren't talking with the Burmese before. There wasn't a sustained process at all. The only place you've had a sustained process is in the Middle East, and it's gone absolutely nowhere. So I'm just wondering why you think that the immediate goal, not the end goal, but the immediate goal of getting a sustained, establishing a sustained process, why you think that's
well,
the
Matt,
right way to go?
By sustained process, no one's trying to downplay the urgency and the need for concrete action.
Right, well, the problem, of course,
we're moving to another step. This was a beginning meeting. We came away with looking towards Baghdad, but we're obviously going to look for serious engagement and action on the part of the Iranians.
One last thing,
yeah, sure.
And that is that Prime Minister Netanyahu did not seem too pleased with this. He said basically you've given them another 5 weeks to keep enriching and to do whatever they want without any pressure at all. Why is he not right?
Well, the president spoke to this yesterday. There's no freebie. There's no freebie for Iran. We've got the strongest sanctions in history against Iran right now, and they're going to get stronger as we move into the summer. There's no sense that Iran's getting some kind of freebie here.
Well, just, can you say, is it in fact correct that Iran will be able to, until the next meeting at least, continue to do whatever it wants?
Again, Iran is, and
Well,
we've
is that
seen...
right or not?
No, we've seen the
No?
effects that the sanctions are having on Iran. It's strangling its economy. The rial has fallen in value. So the idea that they're getting some kind of free pass is not true.
Well, the question is, what is there right now? Why is Netanyahu wrong? Why does this not mean that Iran now has another 5 weeks to do whatever it wants?
Again, because it's not as though Iran were free and clear. They are operating under very difficult, if not crippling, international sanctions, and they are aware of that. So they have every motivation to engage constructively and come to the table with concrete proposals.
And why 5
Were
weeks?
there any particular?
Why 5 weeks, not 2 weeks?
I don't know why that time frame. But they're looking to Baghdad.
As a result of the Istanbul meeting, is Iran really closer to the U.S. or international position on the issue of, let's say, uranium enrichment?
Again, I'm not going to get into the specific discussions, and I'm not going to negotiate this from the podium. I think,
It is your understanding that they are closer, that they have actually moved towards the position of the United States and other international community members?
I think that they came to the table serious. The talks focused on the nuclear issues of concern here, which has not always been the case in the past. But we're very much at a beginning stage here. But we feel it was a foundation for next talks.
And that does give you reason to believe that Iran is headed in the right direction as far as coming clean on its nuclear
I think we're going to
program.
wait and see what they actually come to the table with in terms of proposals, and then we'll be ready to.
So in 5 weeks, you could say we have another 5 weeks to meet, let's say, this time somewhere else?
I don't think, I think Secretary President was very clear. There is a window, it remains open, but that window is closing.
Thank you.
Tehran's already asking for the West to start canceling the sanctions. Is that where it comes into place?
No, we're not
before
there
the
yet.
Baghdad
Sanctions
meeting?
remain in place, and, until no one's talking about any sanctions being reversed or canceled at all. Yeah, go ahead. I think, did you have another question, Sean? Or- Okay. Do you want to switch? Are we done with Iran?
On Iran,
Yeah, sure.
actually, follow up. If there will be a result on the negotiation in Baghdad, the sanction regime will be started in June 28. There will be a change in the sanction regime, according to the results of Baghdad
I think
conference?
that's just a very speculative question. Let's wait till we get to Baghdad
to
and see.
understand the process.
No, look, nobody's talking about ending or suspending the sanctions regime that's in place, except for the Iranians. But, we're definitely not there. Yeah, go ahead, North Korea.
Regarding North Korean missile launch, does the United States have any additional separate sanctions against North Korea?
Does the U.S. have...
Any additional separate sanctions against North Korea?
You mean aside from existing UN sanctions? Or
Yeah, U.S.
Sorry.
sanctions.
I believe we do have
Yeah.
clearly bilateral sanctions against North Korea. And we've got very strong sanctions in place against North Korea, clearly. But you raised North Korea, and I did want to note, you've obviously all seen reports out of New York that the presidential statement was adopted earlier today that condemns North Korea's recent attempt to launch a satellite. Ambassador Rice spoke to it more eloquently than I ever could, but she obviously stressed that this was an extremely quick response by the Security Council and a swift and unanimous adoption is what she said, and it's very true.
Freezing about North Korean financial sanctions against North.
I think
Yes.
what this presidential statement referred to is they're going to refer it to the Sanctions Committee to look at ways that they can tighten it. Always when there's sanctions in place, and we do this across the board, whether it's Iran or Syria or indeed North Korea, there's always ways to look at how to tighten the implementation and strengthen the implementation of the sanctions. So I think that's one of the things we're looking at. Go ahead.
North Korea told a State Department official that it will not accept IAEA inspections because those were based on the condition of nutritional assistance. So what is the U.S. view on this?
I would just refer you to the IEA. I don't know. I haven't seen any of those reports, so it's really their response that matters here. Go ahead,
What's the
Sean.
sense of,
Okay, Russ.
what's the sense of whether or not North Korea might still be planning to launch any underground nuclear tests?
I mean, others have spoken. I had mentioned on Friday, there is very often a cycle or a pattern to these kinds of actions. It's impossible, frankly, for us to say at this point, but, we strongly discourage it from moving down that track.
I don't know if you want to go down this road, but
Probably not.
not a good preface. But
That's okay.
Kim Jong-un, he spoke for the first time in public. Any observations from that you get about the leadership transition, about how it's going? I think
Honestly, it's a pretty opaque system, so it's really difficult to make any kind of judgments. He spoke about their further military industrialization, or however you want to term it. What we've said before is something I would just say again, which is, North Korea needs to focus less on further militarization and more on meeting the needs and aspirations of its people.
Was this a speech his father could have given?
No
So
idea.
U.S. options on the table for sanctions against North Korea.
Yes, I mean we're always looking at. I'm not sure what you're saying. You're saying.
Any particular options do you have it? I mean, U.S. have.
I mean, we're always looking at ways to strengthen our sanctions regime, whether it's bilateral or multilateral through the UN, especially in light of North Korea's actions. Yeah, go ahead,
Can
Sonia.
we go to Syria?
Yeah, sure.
Are there any plans to talk with the North Koreans, to tell them what, if anything, they could do to revive the February 29th agreement? Is there anything that they can do to revive that?
Well, I think, it's pretty clear with the satellite launch that they've dug themselves into a hole, if you will, of further isolation. They've walked away from the statements or the commitments that they made on Leap Day that you just mentioned. I'm not aware that there's going to be any further engagement with the North Koreans moving forward. Nothing is certainly planned. The President said the other day that, if they do come back and appear to engage or willing to engage constructively, then we can move forward down that track. But again, we've not seen any indication that they're going to do that.
You and numerous other officials have constantly, in referring to North Korea, have used the phrase, we're not going to watch. We've seen that movie once. We're not going to watch it again.
There's a lot of
Yeah. Why are you
a lot of
willing?
cliches flying around.
Why are you willing to watch the movie again? Still.
Well, you're saying that we are.
Well,
in fact, watching
I'm just
this movie
wondering.
again.
I mean, are they irredeemable? And if they're not irredeemable, why not? And how can you ever trust anything that they say again?
It's a fair question, Matt. I mean, I and one I frankly can't answer. I think that all we can do is offer a different path, the opportunity for North Korea to engage constructively with the rest of the world. That opportunity is clearly in their interest. We can see it. They, for some reason, cannot. But they have to, again, come in line with existing UN Security Council resolutions. That's the bare minimum. They've been unable to do that.
The U.S. had essentially conceded that there was some sort of food emergency inside North Korea. Now with this attempted missile launch and the suspension of the food aid, how serious does the U.S., does the World Food Program judge what's happening inside North Korea right now?
I mean, I frankly don't have the latest assessments in front of me. We are moving into the growing season, but really I'd have to refer you to the experts in Rome or the World Food Program who can give you a better judge of that. It's unfortunate that we no longer can move forward with this program. Our hearts go out to the North Korean people who are suffering, but it's clear that we can't have any confidence that this program will be implemented in the way that we want to see it implemented.
Campbell mentioned that the trilateral meeting between U.S., Japan, and South Korea will happen sometime after next
Yes.
month. Is there any update as to where this will happen?
I don't.
Or
No.
when? Okay.
Just stay tuned, but no, I don't have any further information. We ready to move on from
I think
North Korea?
North Korea doesn't care about the sanctions against North Korea, the UN resolution 1718 or 1874, whatever. They don't care about. They ignored their sanctions. How can a country that North Koreans ignore it?
Well, again, I mean, it's their own. It's you're saying that they simply ignore these existing resolutions,
Yes, sir.
and and as long as they continue to do so, the door for further engagement will remain shut, and they'll remain under sanctions. And it's clearly not in their interest. As I said to Matt, we can all see that, but they cannot. But we do remain ready to engage them. But again, at the very bare minimum, they need to come in line with existing UN Security Council resolutions. Yes,
You go to Syria?
let's go to Syria, and I'll get over to you guys.
I just wanted to ask if you have any update on the conduct or the ability of the UN observers with a blue cap.
Right. My understanding in terms of that there is an advanced group of monitors there on the ground now. I believe 6 monitors. Obviously, the full complement I think is 31. So we're looking at another 25 remaining in the next couple of days. But overall, the news has not been good. We've seen sporadic fighting continuing in parts of Syria. I think we've all seen reports out of Homs that the government forces continue to shell parts of the city. So it's very clear that Assad has not complied with the 6 points in terms of allowing democratic or peaceful demonstrations to take place, releasing political prisoners. There's no movement on any of the other 5 points, and it appears that the fragile ceasefire is eroding as well.
So once it's completely eroded,
I don't know that you can say it's completely eroded. I can say that the Syrian opposition.
No, I said
Yeah.
once this happens, if you're saying that, it's eroding quickly, so we are going to get to a point where it is completely eroded. So what is the next step?
Well, I do think that, we're looking at the advanced team of monitors deployment as an important test of the Syrian government's intentions going forward. These individuals, as they get on the ground, as we've said, need to be out and have access to all parts of Syria.
Well, the regime has already suggested that it has the right to turn back any monitor whose nationality it has a problem with, and it also says that it's going to put in whatever restrictions it feels are necessary on the team's movements. Is that already, a capitulation that they're not going along with this? I mean, how effective can these monitors be if they're already walking into these roadblocks?
Well, I mean, clearly, if they can't get out to see the parts of the country that they need to see, then they're not going to be very effective. So let's let them get the full complement on the ground and look at it from there. But, at the same time, that we're under no illusions that, the Syrian government has time and time again said it was complying with the Assad plan, with the peace plan set out by the Arab League, with the Turkish initiative, and has only used it to stall for time. Yeah, sure.
I realize this is a UN operation, but since you are the president of the Security Council, and not you personally, but the United States is the president of the Security Council this month, I figure you had something to do with it. Are 31 monitors enough to do the job? And who came up with this idea? Why not 33?
I stopped short of that. I think that's right, and not a typo that it's not 30 monitors. I don't know the answer.
Well, still, who came up with it?
I don't know, and I don't, Secretary's called for robust mission.
31?
I think we'd like to see more monitors on the ground, and, going forward.
Can you ask to find out?
I'll take the question behind the number.
The figure that is being thrown around, like 250,
Right.
Is that sufficient in your view?
I mean, again, we want to see as many, I think it's a better number certainly than 30, but, again, we're going to let this mission
But
move forward, and we're going to, again, the proof here is whether these individuals can actually get out and are not thwarted in their attempt to, view different parts of Syria and really to be able to guarantee or to certify that the ceasefire is in fact in place.
So how do you determine how many you need? Like you look at the Kosovo or the Balkan example back in the 90s and so on. How do you decide that we need X number of monitors in Syria or in Homs or Der'a and Deir Zur and so on? How do you decide that?
That's probably a better question for the UN, even though Matt correctly points out we're the president of the Security Council, but I'd really have to refer you to the experts. I think what we've been on the record saying is we want as robust a mission as possible, so we would rather see more rather than fewer. Yeah, go ahead, Russ.
Where's the deterrence effect in all this, in terms of keeping the regime from continuing to attack people in areas where they feel that they need to be put down, for lack of a better expression?
Well, again, I think, the idea behind monitors is if you can actually get them out into all areas of the country, then they do become a deterrence factor in so far as their eyes and ears on the ground bearing witness to what's going on. The other deterrence factor is we've not let up, if you will, on the gas on increased sanctions, on increased political pressure, and that's going to stay absolutely in place until we see, the Syrian government take concrete steps to implement the Annan plan.
But isn't that ascribing these monitors a level of moral authority that's somehow the intrinsic dignity of the people themselves don't seem to have on the regime?
Not at all. It's simply providing, as we would with, we've advocated for as robust as possible an international media presence on the ground because we recognize that these so-called impartial observers can add a measure of credibility to reports that we're already well aware that are happening, of the atrocities that are happening on the ground. And it's one of the reasons why we're trying to, out of the last Friends of Syria meeting, this group, that accountability group that's going to begin compiling evidence of these atrocities because, as we've said many times, the Syrian government, those officials who are complicit rather in this in the regime's abuses are going to be held accountable.
There are some activists who have argued that sending in the monitors is all well and fine, but what they really need are weapons to fight back against the regime.
Well, look, as I noted earlier, the Syrian opposition has courageously refrained, in large part, from engaging in this latest assault by the government's forces, by Assad's regime's artillery shells, that I think speaks to their commitment to a peaceful way forward.
I wanted to ask about Ambassador Ford. Is he in any way in touch with the internal opposition?
Yes, he still maintains contact. He obviously has a Facebook page that's still seen throughout Syria, and he uses that as a platform to show, as you've seen, satellite photos and other imagery that shows some of the regime's abuses.
Through that medium, through Facebook.
He can, and we've also got obviously other, as much as clearly communication's an issue here, that's one of the things we've talked about before. But he does remain in contact with members of the opposition.
How long will they stay these monitors on CBC?
You know what? I apologize. I don't have the. I think they'll stay as long as they can. To ensure that the Annan plan is indeed being implemented. I don't have a time frame.
Long way to go. So, will there be any Americans within the group?
Not that I'm aware of. We are obviously supporting the mission financially, but we don't expect to deploy U.S. monitors.
About the buffer zone, there's some circles they've discussed this buffer zone option on Syria over the weekend, including the spokesman of Kofi Annan. Have you started to discuss with allies the buffer zone option in Syria?
Again, we've been pretty clear that the buffer zone is a pretty complex undertaking, And there's obviously, it's not necessarily as easy as it sounds, to implement. We talked about, I know the Turkish government officials have made reference to some type of buffer zone. We'd certainly be willing to listen to any ideas that are on the table, but, what we want to see, where we've been focused on is a ceasefire and then humanitarian access to those areas that desperately need it.
Humanitarian corridor is an alternative to buffer zone for you?
Again, I think, we're always willing to look at various alternatives while recognizing the difficulties inherent in some of these operations, and there are indeed serious challenges. But I think, as we said, our focus right now, we've got the Annan plan. Let's see this ceasefire take hold, strengthen, and then we can get the kind of humanitarian access that's needed to people
So
who need
you're
it.
expecting this idea from Turks or other neighborhood countries in the region?
Yes, I mean, we certainly would be open to ideas.
And the last question about the refugees in Turkey. Have you offered any aid to Turkish government to handle this refugee problem?
You know what, I haven't checked on that lately. I believe we have, as well as other international organizations. Turkey's played just a remarkable leadership role in this crisis, and especially with regard to hosting these refugees on Turkish soil. I do know at the beginning of the crisis, when refugees started crossing the border into Turkey, that we had offered and Turkey had declined. I'm not sure where we're at. I'll take the question.
Palestinian issue?
Yes, sir.
One, since no matter how imperfect or initial or preliminary the ceasefire is, if it really is even a ceasefire, since the fighting continues, what does the administration, despite that it was fact that it was signed, is the administration still planning to ramp up its aid to the Syrian opposition?
You're talking about the non-lethal? I think that's moving forward, yes.
So that's going to go ahead regardless of whether the ceasefire actually takes hold,
Right.
and whether the regime agrees to all the steps. And
Well, again, right, this is a way to
it's going to continue
allow-
no matter what the government does.
My understanding is yes, because
Okay.
what we're trying to do
And
is
then-
build, just to complete the thought, what we're trying to do is help the peaceful opposition coalesce, to be able to communicate and coordinate themselves. And indeed, if we're looking down the road at some kind of democratic transition, that would be useful.
And then the second thing is, what's your understanding about the next Friends of Syria meeting? Is there one scheduled?
Yeah, I did check on that. I think we're still obviously open to it, but we haven't seen any announcements out of Paris. So we'll wait and see how that develops. But certainly, the Secretary remains ready to go.
One more on that. Ambassador Ford's engagement with Syrian government officials, how much has he had?
I'm sorry, you said Syrian government officials?
Right.
I'm not aware that he's had any contacts with Syrian government officials. I'll have to check. I don't think so.
We go to the Palestinian issue?
Sure. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Mark, tomorrow the Palestinians are getting ready to hand in a much touted and talked about letter to the office of Prime Minister Netanyahu. And now my question to you emanates from a report by Haaretz. They're saying that initially the letter had a threat by Abbas that they will dissolve the authority, but under a great deal of pressure from the government of the United States, that he backed down. Could you confirm
I'm sorry,
or
can
deny
you
that?
just rewind there? I didn't hear the last-
Did you exercise a great deal of pressure on Palestinian President Authority Mahmoud Abbas to withdraw clause in his letter that threatened to dissolve the Palestinian Authority?
So
Are you aware of the letter that has been talked about?
I'm not aware of the letter. We had the quartet meeting here last week. You saw the statement.
Right.
I can't confirm any letter, and I'm certainly not going to get into the contents of any letter that I don't know whether it exists.
Because it was also published,
Yep.
the full text was
The full
published
text
by
of the letter.
AFP, today. But it would be a good thing to look at to see what is your response to some of the points that were made in the letter. My second question on the Palestinian issue, Israel has blocked about 1,500 pro-Palestinian activists, mainly from Europe, to come to the West Bank, Bethlehem and Ramallah and other places. Do you have a position on this issue? Are you aware of it?
You're talking about the so-called flotilla?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to finish speaking more broadly, obviously, I can't confirm there's a letter. I can't, I'm not, and if I was able to, I wouldn't get into the contents.
Right.
But we do, sorry, just to finish my thought, we do support direct, communication between the parties. I mean, we think that's in and of itself a good thing. In terms of the flotilla, I would just say, Israel is a sovereign nation. Like any sovereign nation, it has a right to control the flow of people and goods through its ports.
Yeah, but you do agree that Area A, at least Area A, and the Palestinian territory, which includes Beit Lahem and Ramallah and so on, is basically a sovereign area, so they can conceivably go visit Palestinian territories. Correct?
You've heard our position. So, yeah, go ahead in the back.
Yeah. Hi, Mark. And with respect to Cartagena, did the embassy there learn about the alleged conduct of Secret Service agents from the local authorities, and what steps did embassy personnel take after learning those allegations?
I'd first of all have to refer you to the Secret Service for any details about the investigation into the incident. I don't have details of how it came to light, but again, President spoke to this yesterday in Cartagena, saying, there's an investigation underway. Let's wait for all the details to emerge. I'm not sure, frankly, if the embassy had any direct role.
Well, Congressman King, I mean, he's quoted on the record saying that they were involved by the police, but I'm wondering if that kicked off either an internal investigation within state or them calling the U.S. State Department to inform.
Well, as you know, very often, there's, in these advanced groups that go down or go anywhere for a trip, that there are many representatives of the United States there on scene. I'm not sure what the embassy's precise role was, if any. I'll have to take the question, but in terms of the investigation, President spoke to it. There needs to be fully played out. But he also spoke to the need for any American official who's abroad to recognize the fact that they are representatives of the United States and conduct themselves appropriately.
And just last.
A message given to the employees of diplomatic security, just as a friendly reminder?
I don't know if any updated information. We certainly expect any U.S. diplomat overseas at all times to behave accordingly and behave appropriately, and to recognize that when they are overseas, they are seen as representatives of the United States.
I wasn't aware that you moved your embassy from Bogota to Cartagena.
I didn't imply that.
There is a consulate in Cartagena, right?
I believe so.
And would they have been the ones who were involved in this?
That's what I don't know. I don't know.
Or how much of the embassy staff was up in Cartagena for?
That's what I was trying to get at, is that, obviously for a presidential visit, there would be a detail of embassy staff as part of the advanced team.
There is a consulate in Cartagena, yeah?
I'll check. I believe so.
Just one.
Actually, maybe, Patrick? No? No.
There is no,
Yeah.
there is no consulate
No
in
consulate.
Cartagena. Why not?
I had no idea.
I mean, you're opening them in the middle of nowhere, Brazil, all of a sudden.
Very often, consulates are based on reciprocity. So, it probably has something to do with the number of consulates that we would have in any country would be based on the number of consulates and embassies that given country would have in the United States. That's often the way it works.
Okay.
But you stumped me on Cartagena, so
Colombia doesn't.
you can give me that smug smile.
You think that Colombia has fewer than 2
I don't know.
consulates in the United States? Somehow I find that hard to believe.
I don't know.
Different issue.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead. Finish.
Well, just that you're aware, I'm sure the secretary was photographed out having fun in Cartagena. What's your comment? Some have criticized her for doing that in light of this scandal investigation that she's out appearing to be partying. Do you have any comment on that?
I can confirm that she indeed did have a very good time and was just enjoying some of the nightlife in Cartagena with colleagues, and it's kind of a dog bite man story. There's nothing to it. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. You had your hand raised.
About Argentina, it has been announced in the past couple of hours that the Argentinian government is taking over the country's top oil producer. It's controlled by Spain. It's a privately held company in Spain, but there's also American investment in the company. The Argentinian government is taking over 51% of the company. The European Union has filed public complaints, and it has been said during the weekend that the American government was planning to file a complaint in front of the World Trade Organization if this happened. So I wanted to ask you about that.
And I'll take the question. I'm not aware of that of the story, so I'll have to look into it. We'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Egypt? I
Egypt.
wonder if you have any comment on the panel striking out 3 candidates. Omar Suleiman, who fell short apparently by 31 out of 30,000, 31 votes out of 30,000 petitions, whatever, and Khairat Shata and Salah Abu Ismail. Do you have a comment on that?
Well, this is obviously, a very hot issue, if you will, in Egypt. We've been very clear all along as this process moves forward through parliamentary elections, through the constitution writing, and now into the presidential race. Our only concern is that, this is a free and fair and transparent process, that it move forward in a way that meets the aspirations of the Egyptian people. But it's not for us to comment on the political process itself.
Do you have a first-hand exposure as to the process that they have used to weed out?
I do not.
You don't. I mean, the U.S. government. I'm saying that.
You're talking about
I'm saying that the vetting process to who qualifies and who does not qualify as a candidate. Does the U.S. in any way, through its non-government organizations or directly, have an exposure or have a window onto this process?
Under that vetting process or whatever.
Right,
I mean, look, they've come out publicly with their explanation for their decisions. Again, our interest is only seeing that this process move forward towards presidential elections in June in a way that's perceived by the Egyptian people as free and fair and democratic. But in terms of a window onto their process, I don't have anything particularly to add to that. And you mentioned NGOs, so I'll just say, we do believe that non-government organizations can play a very objective but important role in these kinds of political processes.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Sudan?
Yeah.
Just wanted to see your assessment about how things stand right now. Obviously, there's the reported incursion by the South in
Right.
the oil area. And then following that, the parliament in Khartoum today declared that South Sudan is considered an enemy state. What's your assessment of how things stand now, and is there a risk of all-out war?
Well, we strongly condemn the bombing by the Sudan Armed Forces of the UN mission in South Sudan. They had a community support base in Mayam Unity State, which is located in South Sudan. And of course, we denounce the continued aerial bombardment by the Sudanese Armed Forces of South Sudan, which includes civilian areas. As we said last week, we strongly condemn the offensive military incursion into Sudan by the SPLA and the seizure of Heglig, and we want to see South Sudan to withdraw its forces immediately and unconditionally from Heglig. So, I mean, we want to see, bottom line, an immediate and unconditional cessation of hostilities. South Sudan needs to withdraw from Heglig, and Sudan needs to stop its aerial bombardments, and both sides need to get back to the AU mechanism for resolving these outstanding issues. The tensions are far too high, the fighting has to cease, and humanitarian access has to be granted.
Just one follow-up on that.
And just a note, I did want to note that our special envoy, Prince Lyman, did meet with South Sudan President Salva Kiir earlier today in Juba, and they had a meaningful dialogue about how to de-escalate the tensions.
With Sudan, during that meeting, were there any discussions about what might happen if they don't withdraw from Heglig?
Well, again, I mean, I think our very strong urging here is for both sides to recognize the fact that this is really a no-win situation, and the only way to resolve these differences is to get back to the high-level implementation panel process overseen by the AU. I mean, that's how you're going to resolve these territorial issues, these border issues, as well as issues of equity in terms of resources. Right now, both sides are losing as a result of this fighting.
But the U.S. is one of the primary funders of the new government of South Sudan. So does the U.S. not have undue influence on...
Well, again, what we're trying to do here is to move forward. We've seen the CPA process stall or break down. We've seen a return to fighting, so we need to get both countries back on track.
That was the process I was thinking of earlier, the one that was a success.
Well, I mean, you know.
Yeah, where's it gotten you now?
We're still getting through it, but anyway.
Follow up. President Kiir of the South, China has invited him to come to Beijing. China, of course, in the past has faced criticism, particularly on Capitol Hill, over its relationship to Khartoum. Do you have an assessment of the invitation? Is this a positive step? Is it what role could the Chinese play in this?
Well, you know, obviously we would want to see them, convey the very same message in this regard. You know, that it's to no one's gain to continue fighting. Both sides need to step back and return to the table.
But you don't think that the Chinese invitation has everything to do with the fact that they're not getting any oil out of South Sudan because they're not pumping any of it?
Well, again, regardless of their motives, what's important here is...
So you don't care if the Chinese are acting purely out of self-interest here?
What is important here is that the fact that there is no agreement on sharing these resources is hurting both Sudan and South Sudan. Yeah, in the back.
Pakistan?
Yep.
Pakistani Parliament has approved its recommendation to reset U.S.-Pakistan relations, and looks like they're willing to restore NATO supply line. But it seems like Islamabad is very clear about telling Washington, first stop drone attacks, apology on NATO strike on November 24th. So what is your response on this? It seems like they're very clear about these conditions. So where we go from here now?
Well, first of all, I think the parliamentary review process, while it has, in fact, left Parliament, is still has not been approved by the cabinet. I can, I think, confirm that Secretary Clinton spoke with Pakistani Foreign Minister Carr a few hours ago, and they did discuss next steps in the U.S.-Pakistani dialogue in light of the conclusion of this parliamentary review. They also, of course, discussed yesterday's attacks in Afghanistan, but they did raise the parliamentary review process and our willingness to engage in a dialogue with Pakistan.
I know that the Secretary spoke with Ambassador Crocker on Sunday.
Right.
And then we have this criticism from President Karzai that essentially it was NATO intelligence failures that led to this sustained attack. I thought the Afghans were in charge of security for Kabul.
Well, first of all, you're right that the Secretary did speak to Ambassador Crocker yesterday. Obviously, we condemn the terrible attacks that took place yesterday in Kabul, and we also offer our deepest condolences to all the victims and their families. I think one of the positive stories, if you can term it that way, out of yesterday's attacks is the quick response and professionalism of the Afghan security forces. I know General Allen noted that in his statement. They did respond quickly. They required, frankly, little or no ISAF support. So it really showed how far they've come in increasing their capabilities and their professionalism.
But doesn't it beg the question that you have someone such as the Afghan president basically blaming the West for the second sort of attack of this nature in the last 6 months when, he's been insisting, my people should be able to take control?
Well, again, I think the response of the Afghan security forces show that they have made great strides in being able to respond to these kinds of attacks. Bottom line, Roz, is that intelligence is great, but you're never going to be able to prevent every attack. I think that that the fact that they were able to respond so quickly, that they were able to minimize the casualties from this attack, and basically thwart the Taliban's actions very quickly and effectively speaks volumes.
But it does beg the question, though. I mean, these attacks took place in supposedly the safest area of Kabul, where the U.S. and other Western countries have
their
embassies, and for the amount of infiltration that's alleged to have happened in the past week leading up to Sunday's attack does raise some questions about whether or not the Afghans can be trusted to actually protect the foreign diplomats and
Look.
others who were there, trying
Sure,
to,
I mean,
trying to work with them.
There's no place that's immune to the type of attack that took place in Kabul. We've seen that in our own country. We can speak to the fact that lone terrorists or a small group of terrorists hell-bent on violence can attack almost anywhere. What I think is important is that security forces are able to respond quickly, effectively, and to squelch it before it becomes something more deadly than it already has been.
Can I just go back to Pakistan for a minute?
Yeah.
You mentioned that Secretary Clinton's expressed willingness to discuss the issues with Foreign Minister Carr. How specific did it get? I mean, some of the demands that have been issued by the Pakistani Parliament include an end to drone attacks, an apology. Did they get into the specifics? Did the Secretary say she's willing
I
to talk
can't
about
get
things
into
like
the
that?
specifics of whether they discuss the specifics. I think, look, our posture right now is, we recognize that this has been a long and difficult road for Pakistan. It speaks, frankly, to the strength of Pakistan's democratic institutions that this parliamentary review's taken place, that the civilian government has taken the lead on this issue, has owned it, and has come up with a series of recommendations. I think it's incumbent on us now to engage with them in a discussion about some of those recommendations.
On the Secretary's call with Foreign Minister Carr, that was from Brazil,
Yes.
not from the plane.
Don't know, Matt. I'll find out. I think it was from Brazil, because she's on the ground in Brazil, yeah. If that's different, I'll let you know, but I'm almost positive it's from Brazil.
And was there anything else discussed other than the attacks in Afghanistan and the parliamentary
review and the attacks on Afghanistan.
That was it? What did the Secretary tell the Foreign Minister about what the U.S. thinks of the parliamentary review, other than that you respect it and think that the Pakistanis can?
Well, again, I can't get into the exact details of the conversation. Frankly, I didn't get a readout.
Well, we went
but I
through
would
this a
anyway.
little bit on Thursday. So,
Sure. What did we get?
Is everything that the Pakistanis raised something that you're willing to talk about?
I'm not going to say that we're going to address every issue on that list. I think, as I said, our posture regarding this review is that we're willing to listen to their concerns and try to address them as best we can.
Are you willing to listen to their concerns on every issue?
And again, I know where you're leaning or getting at on this, and I can't talk about that.
I'm leaning towards nothing, really.
Okay. I mean, I think we're willing to hear them out on
So
on
nothing
all
is
the
off
issues
the
that
table?
I think we're willing to listen and hear them out on all the issues that were raised in this review that are of concern to them, yes.
Okay, so nothing is off the table.
Okay, if that's...
Anything that they want to talk about, you'll talk about.
No, I think we said that it's in the parliamentary review. I don't think we're going to
No,
ask
that's what I
them
mean.
about...
Anything I'm not expecting you to raise some issue that's not unrelated, or them to raise some issue like, I don't know, Canada about, but everything that they have in the
I think
review,
we're
you're willing to
I think
talk.
we're willing to listen to their concerns that were raised in the parliamentary review. However,
Are you
we're
willing
not
to do
gonna-
anything about them?
Again, I think we're going to listen to them, and we're going to engage in them as any bilateral relationship would, and talk through these issues.
Is it problematic when the Pakistani parliament and publicly and the cabinet start debating and talking about something that you're not allowed to talk about because it's classified, yet everybody and their mother is aware that it's going on, and it happens virtually every day?
It's not problematic, because I'm not going to address it. Go ahead.
Ambassador Sherry Rahman just returned from Islamabad. Is she going to meet some State Department official to present those recommendations?
I'm sorry, Ambassador?
Sherry Rahman, the
Oh,
Pakistani
okay.
ambassador. She's
Right.
just
I don't know, frankly. I don't know if she has any meetings planned. I'll look into it.
Any U.S. diplomats traveling to Pakistan or any bilateral
Nothing to announce. That it? Thanks, guys.